Yep, I'm here. Thanks for the quick introduction. I'm just going to tee it up to Lindsay and Mercedes, the voices of resin, as it were, doing an interview with one of the legends of resin, Mark Wolverton, having developed a career over working with different OEMs and different resin manufacturers. So with that, I'll turn it over to PlastChicks and Mark Wolverton.
If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE sponsored podcast. Hey.
What's going on?
Oh, we're just up here in dreary Erie, living our best life.
So are you available to take off your plastic things for a second? Because
you want to see my space buns. Yes.
Space buns.
I know you do. Well, we'll do it. I just want everyone to know that I am living in a slightly less than cool background. I have cardboard up, so whatever.
I love it.
Here's my little space buns.
Show me those space buns.
I'm living my best life. I am thriving, if you will.
Hashtag essential.
Hashtag so essential. All right. Well, I'm Lindsay Nebel.
I am Mercedes Landazuri, and with our powers combined, we are
PlastChicks,
the voices of resin.
That's us.
Yeah. So we host a podcast that's released the first Friday of every month. They sponsor it, edit out all of our incompetencies, and make it ready for the general public. And we have once a week been going on live with ANTEC, virtual ANTEC. This is going to be our very last one.
Last one. So sad.
Wrapping it up. And so we would like to bring on our special guest today, fellow SPE Chicago board member, Mark Wolverton.
I'm a little left out. Hey, Mark.
Hi, ladies. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Perfect.
Great. Now, I finally caught up with the 21st century and updated a little piece of my tech, my internet connections, and even went out and splurged on a new computer just to make sure that I could connect correctly with you ladies.
We feel very honored.
I'm very flattered to be connected to PlastChicks as a plastosaur in the industry. So despite what Jeremy was saying about me.
So you are a member of, as I mentioned, SP Chicago. You are also one of the plastics pioneers.
Yes, I'm a pioneer.
Which is an invite-only club, as I understand it.
Super exclusive.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's how did Glenn put it to me when he invited me? It's a bunch of businessmen and women in plastics that have contributed 25 or more years of development in the industry, and who wanted to continue relationships that they found valuable even as competitors and colleagues after suspending their active careers or even late in their active careers, just to get together outside and enjoy the social aspects of a society. And for many of them, as self-employed people, they found a way to do it as a benevolent society and share some of the expenses with Uncle Sam. So,
so you're a longtime veteran of the industry. You recently retired, and then, like fellow Chicago and Michael Jordan, came out of retirement specifically to play with Pippen. Here represented as Eve Vitale. So now you are a plastics educator for PlastiVan, is that correct?
Yeah. I pioneers, part of it comes down to some conversations. I've known Eve for several years through industry conventions and things like that. And she's great people, as you know. And
we're fans.
Yeah, I'm a big fan too. And Pioneers is a generous sponsor to the PlastiVan program, among many other sponsors. And one day we were talking about what Pioneers could do to help PlastiVan a little bit more. And she says, you're asking a lot of questions, and she says, would you consider being an educator? And I said, so tell me about the gig. And, you know, it turned out we reached a pretty close agreement, and I've
That's
been
how
an
she gets
educator now
you.
for a little over a year.
That's how she gets you. She plays it like it's not going to be anything. And then, oh, you're going to do this? She's very sneaky that way.
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of the girls in my life have been that way. So
We get stuff done.
So Mark, I asked you on the podcast a while back. I think it was at a Christmas party this past holiday party for SPE and IDSA. I was obviously we've known each other for a few years, and I've been impressed with you for many reasons. But what really struck me was you spoke to a friend of mine that was your first time meeting this friend, who had recently been through was going through a layoff. And you just immediately jumped in. You had some really sage advice. And I wanted to bring you on specifically now because I think that there's a lot of change happening.
Realignment, if you will.
A lot of realignment. A lot of people, you know, some people are still in positions. Some people are in between positions. Some people are starting new positions. So wanted to bring you on today to talk a little about what to do in this in an in-between period.
Right.
I'm really flattered to be invited to talk about that. I do not consider myself an expert in it, even though I've gone through it a number of times in my career, both voluntary and involuntary transitions. It happens to all of us. And I remember that Christmas party. It was IDSA. It was a great little venue. Your friend was terrific, and I think it had just happened the day or two before when we met each other at the party. So there was this.
Wait, was this me at the party?
Look.
Am I not remembering something? Was I there?
No, you weren't there, Lindsay. This was in Chicago downtown on a, I don't know, Friday night.
All right, fine.
You know, it was an interesting and eclectic and wonderful bunch of people to get together. So it was eye-opening to me. And we ended up just chatting. And I know you were part of that conversation, and yeah, the transition's tough. Been through it a couple of times. I mean, if you look at psychology of transitions, I've had the very good fortune to be counseled by some really great people in doing my transitions. Biggest changes in our lives include things like birth and death of a loved one, okay, new babies as might be, or our parents passing on, or our brothers or sisters, marriage and divorce. They are equally different sides of the same coin, okay, big stressors in our lives. Buying and selling a home, relocating, changing apartments, you don't consider it frequently unless you've really been trained, but that's a big one. And then losing and finding a job. Okay, those are also big emotional stressors on all of us. And in all likelihood, if we're going through a layoff or a transition or a change, we're going to get at least two of those. Okay, in our industry, it's tough to change roles without having to change residences. At least in my career, it was. And then you add in some of the stresses of stuff that goes on with your partner, significant other, however you want to say it. Yeah, it's tough times, and we're not prepared for that. I mean, we're in a society, we're mostly technical people. We think of things as problems that can be solved, and again, but it's not going to allow you to use equations to understand it. This is emotional. This hits at the heart.
Oh yeah, I've had a couple layoffs, and the first one tore me to bits. Like, I reanalyzed everything I did in the last 6 months, you know, from, did I send that email out in time? I took it wholly as a personal reflection of myself, even though they made very clear to say that's not the situation. But yeah, it was a lot of Oreos, a lot of upsetness.
Well, the Oreo's okay. The other thing that goes through, and you know, to a manager, to a business leader, this is a business decision. Okay, it's driven typically by finances. To us, as individual contributors and employees, and regarding this as our livelihood and part of our self-identity. It's extremely personal, and we have to bridge that coin, that bridge. We have to make that span across that says, yes, it's not personal to the business, it's unemotional, but to us it's very emotional. Okay, and frequently, especially the first time that it happens, you're not ready for it. Okay, and it probably comes out of the blue. You may have been able to read some tea leaves and you knew the business was having some issues, but you didn't think it was going to be on your plate that those issues were going to be. And so, taking the Scout motto from my time as a Boy Scout, be prepared. And we have to sort of work our way through that to be prepared. And this is my thoughts to anyone who either is or is not going for it is think about this and get ready, and get ready on a bunch of different fronts, because it's some way or another, this is going to be one of the big stressors. And when I go back to those 4 categories of stressors, they say you get 2 of them and it can drive you into depression, and 3 of them at the same time might put you suicidal. So really, indeed, you do want to reach out for some psychological assistance and support, and build your network and carry that through. It's tough times, no question about that. And by the way, retirement's not all that much easier, because all of a sudden you cut yourself out in a voluntary situation. You say, okay, so now what am I going to do with myself? And of course, in my case, I'd play golf and shoot arrows, but
Well, so you're working on it there.
I'm trying to.
So, with people going through, like you're saying, a couple of these things at a time right now, possibly, what do you recommend is kind of their first step if they were to be laid off during this time? Do you go and immediately dust up your resume? Do you take some time to yourself? Do you, what would you recommend?
You kind of do it all at once. And this is why it's part of a big stressor when you're going to go through this. Thinking about this, remember that you're not going to be in this alone necessarily. Okay. We are likely to have a life partner. We are likely to have someone that we are very, very close to, or is very, very close to us. And we want to make sure that they understand that we're hurting, and we need to understand that they are hurting in the same way that we would be. It's a tremendous time of uncertainty. Most of us are probably a primary wage earner, if not an equal wage earner within our families. So we're worried about money. We're worried about our personal identity. Okay, I identify myself as an engineer. If I don't have a problem to solve, what good am I, to talk about Dilbert? All right. So in terms of preparation, you sort of have to identify and say, okay, what are my needs? I mean, if you talk to a financial planner and use one, we've all heard the advice, get 6 months of expenses put into the bank as a liquid asset that you don't have to. Yeah, I see that.
I'm so close. Months? I'm like right there.
6 months, really? Okay. And to all of us, we tend to live hand to mouth, or paycheck to paycheck, and especially when we're younger in our career, when we have children. I know that my children, I love them dearly. They were a big expense. Okay,
they're expensive.
What's the number today? They say it's $250,000 from the time they're born to the time they're out of your house. I guess. All right. I don't know. It depends on what you're paying for. But so think about it. And if you have the time to prepare, you want to prepare on a personal identity. You want to prepare on a monetary basis, and you want to prepare on a social basis. Okay. Money's the easy one. Okay. In the sense, put together a budget. I mean, really and truly sit down and put together a budget for your monthly expenses, and look at and consider yourself what's a Maslowian priority: food, shelter, clothing. And I've added transportation to that, because here in America, we can't get by without going someplace, right, even in quarantine. So you put those together and make sure that you've got your priorities there. Then, you look at the rest of it. You do that with your partner and try to make sure that this is right. then take a few minutes or a little longer. A few minutes is an expression, and understand who you are. Now, in some cases, if it's a layoff, you may or may not get what's called outplacement support. Okay, if your company is very generous and works out really well, they may put you in the hands of an outplacement firm that specializes in both the budget piece, the psychology piece, and then the job search preparation piece. And it'll probably take a couple of weeks or a month to get yourself together. You know, you can do these for yourself too if you have a sense. Do a personality analysis. There's something called Myers-Briggs. Okay, you can look it up on Google. Okay, take one of those. Be honest to yourself. Okay, it may point you in a direction of either being a CEO, which we all think we are, or perhaps you're more thinking that you're an individual contributor or a project.
Do you take these after you've been drinking Quarantinis or before?
Both.
Okay.
What about where do the Oreos come into play?
Okay, the Oreos have to go along with Quarantinis at that point. Okay, I prefer the vanilla ones with my white wine in the evening, but you know. That's...
Oh, I like that pairing. Very, very chic.
But you know, you do that, okay, and then you do a professional personal skills assessment. Okay, what are the things that I think I'm good at, and then what are the things that my peers think I'm good at? Okay, and they may or may not match. Okay, you might think you're the best process engineer in the world, and the guys look at you and say, yeah, you don't touch a machine knob ever in my plant. Okay, you might be able to tell me what knobs to turn, but you're not touching that machine. So, okay, I mean, yeah, and be honest and brutal, perhaps even brutally honest with yourself about this.
Mercedes, you want to do mine? Just kidding.
You're really good at sending me memes when I can't get the injection molder to work.
It's true. I'm great at that. You're welcome.
So again, we do these, and then other people have got things that pull together. So, you know, do that, and then craft your resume. Okay, there's a lot of different models. There's a lot of different resources. I've read thousands of resumes as a hiring entity in my career. I've written my resume 15 or 20 times. All right, just because it needed to be rewritten, and you know, make sure that it carries out one, who you have been, but also at the very top, who you perceive yourself as being. And
yeah. My friend, she does resume like editing on the side, yep. And she looked at mine during some point in time, and I had the same template I'd had since college, and I was like, this is fine, it's getting me jobs. And she's like, girl, this is a bad resume. She like redid the whole thing for me. And like instantly I was like, oh, I do look really professional now.
It's a skill set. I mean,
yeah.
We as SPE engineers and SPE members have skill sets in plastics. Okay, whether it's compounding, whether it's design, whether it's color, whether it's processing, whatever, we have those skill sets. Our skill sets, our softer skill sets in the sense of communications are probably an area that we need to work on very, very strongly as people. And I applaud you and Mercedes for what you're doing here with PlastChicks, because that emphasizes and brings out the point that we can be a better communicator in the soft skill area. Writing a resume is both a hard and a soft skill. Okay, there's a format, there's a grammar, right. And when you have a professional looking over your shoulder, and whether it's a professional that you have to pay, or whether it's a professional that'll help you with over a couple of
I just had to bring a beer. It was fine.
Yeah, you sent him a case of beer.
Yeah,
it helps. And it doesn't even have to be a professional. It just needs to be someone that looks over your shoulder and say, hey, this is it. And that's part of the team you're building, okay? Because you're not going to find a job on your own, even though you think it is. At the end of the day, you are really using in part of a team that will do this. And that team can be colleagues, okay? It may be people that you don't know. It may be your LinkedIn network. It might be your non-LinkedIn networks. It may be just all of this. And all of this is sharpening a skill that takes you into a better communication sense. then from there, you're also going to sharpen your technical skills. But again, it's a soft skill writing a resume. It's not just something you do right away. It takes a little bit of time. My first post-layoff resume probably took me 3 weeks in concert with an outplacement counselor to really pull together. And it launched my career in a very positive direction. But yeah, it's not a trivial task. It takes effort.
Yeah, Jeremy Dworshak wrote in, he said, you know, another option is to always have like one of your current colleagues while you're in a job, you know, not somebody that's going to be like, hey, they're looking around, but like take a look at your resume to see that you're both kind of on the same page with how you're presenting yourselves.
Jeremy's dead right on that. Okay, have somebody, you know, again, it's going to be somebody that you trust, and it's not that you're looking around, but it's a question of this: be prepared. Mm-hmm. Okay, if it comes through, and your presentation has a couple of different pieces to it. You know, we've got something that I refer to as is called the escalator or elevator speech. What do you do? Well, I am blah, 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 blah about plastics in processing or in aerospace or in business machines or medical or whatever, okay? Or I am a enhanced designer or a design enhancer or a project leader, okay? But something that can be said in about 30 seconds. I get criticized for it. I talk too much.
I have to say, I want to jump in, not to get you too off track, but I want to jump in here and say, you know, I've heard elevator speech, but escalator speech, I think is so much better, because when we end up giving them, there's so many other distractions around, you know, you're a networking hour or something. And, you know, so it's really, I like the concept of escalator speech better.
And elevators are too quiet. I don't want to talk in there.
Well, not only that, but the escalator speech that you're going to have, you might get a longer chance if you're sharing treads or treads going the same direction. The other might be somebody coming up and you're going down, or vice versa. And that's even half the time that you would have any other way. So it really has to be tightened up and compact and self-descriptive. And basically the point of it is to say, somebody, send me your resume by email. Here's my contact. Okay, that's the point of it, is let's have a conversation further, or I'll meet you at the bottom of the stairs or come back upstairs and meet me. Let's talk about this for 2 more minutes. And that's really all you want it to get done. And then you move. But that's kind of a detail thing about the whole job search piece itself. What we've been talking about up to now is setting the stage, putting the table together, so to speak, for what we're going to try to do. I mean, if you look at it, I suppose if you're this technically minded about it, you could put a fishbone chart together for yourself. You say, okay, the head of the fish is a job. All right, now what are the bits and pieces about this job that I want? That becomes the skeleton off the backbone of the fish. If you're a technical person, you think that way. If you don't think that way, there are a dozen other models. We can do Venn diagrams, we can do circles, we can do all kinds of stuff. But at some point, it all leads to getting the job. But that's the preparation, and that's the planning and the other activity for it.
Right.
And I'm sure that with coronavirus, everything that I've had done for 40 years of job search is changed. Okay, it's going to be very different than what it was, you know, in my career. So. Yeah,
I mean, I wanted to circle back to where you were talking about, you know, building your team and stuff like that. You know, I was one time asked kind of to go through my like resume, and it was just an informal talking to students, I think I was. And I'm listing the jobs I've had. I'm your stereotypical millennial job hopper. I'd like to think I'm somewhere I'm going to stay for a long time, but I have had, you know, I've been in the industry 11 years. I've had 5-6 jobs, something like that. Plus, you know, 3 or 4 internships.
And 2 space buns.
And 2 space buns. So that's a sign of millennial. I'm celebrating May the 4th. So I was telling these students about like my jobs, and each time I was like, they're like, did you apply for that online? And I was like, no, I knew somebody that was hiring. And then I went through the next one. I was like, well, this was from, you know, an alum from Penn State was looking for someone. And I was, you know, happened to be looking. And I finished the thing and I was like, guys, I'm like, I know I say it, but you really need to network. None of these jobs would have happened without me knowing that there was an opening somewhere, or someone knowing that I was looking. And I'm like, I would have never found these jobs, and they would have never found me if it was just straight like going on Indeed.
You know, when I was in my first set of changes, I think the two phrases that were used were the obvious job market, or the open job market, everything that's advertised out on monster.com or whatever, the job boards. And then there's the hidden job market. And these are the ones that you get to by talking with people and having a conversation and following through again with we will call it your network, but you know, people that you know, or even people that you don't know. I mean, you know, part of what helped develop other skills for me was that you have to cold call. Okay, I'm finding a job. Okay, yeah, I saw that.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you do have to cold call on this. And there are some of us that are salespeople, and there's some of us that are not, but it doesn't have to be a dead cold call. Okay, one of the techniques that works for me, or worked for me, was, you know, you send somebody a letter, an email, or text today, depending on what they are. Do you have 5 minutes to have a cup of coffee and talk to me about what I want to do in my career? Please. Okay. And if they're remote, you know, if they're around the corner, meet at a Starbucks when they open up again. If they're not, in this day of quarantine, we're probably going to end up doing it by Zoom or GoToMeeting or,
Right.
you know, FaceTime or whatever. And most people will be willing to talk to you a little bit about it. They understand that we all go through it. Pardon me. And it's kind of an all pay it forward situation. All right. You know, for all of us. Okay. I don't think there's anyone in this industry that hasn't gone through a job transition. You know, you talked about your career. I'd have to go back and count mine. But when I started, I thought I was going to have maybe 2 or 3 job roles, different employers in the course of my career. It's kind of closer to 8 or 9. Okay, and that was predicted to me. That was predicted to me in 1979 that I would go through at least 9 job transitions in my career. I didn't want to believe it. Okay, you talk about millennials saying, you know, it changed. You know, even as a baby boomer, you know, we didn't perceive that. I mean, my dad had a total of 3 employers in his well,
Right.
he didn't change jobs very often, and he was in steel. Okay, I kept on watching steel companies go bankrupt, and that's why I took courses in plastics and said, okay, let's try the next set of materials.
Woo woo!
There's a long family story behind that too. But
I'm my own person, Dad. I'm going into plastics now.
Well, let's just say that when I came back and I said, after I graduated from Drexel with my degree in materials engineering, having started as a metallurgist, and figure I was going to wear the pointy hat and the purple robe standing over this fiery vat of metal.
Love it.
When I came back with a materials engineering degree with an emphasis on plastics and a job offer from a plastics company whose primary purpose at that time was replacing steel.
Ooh.
And that was Dad's industry.
Oh man, you were coming in fast for Dad.
let's just say that Dad was very generous after a couple of years when he realized that he didn't have to keep me excluded from the family, that he allowed me back into family membership.
That must have made for some real awkward Thanksgiving.
Oh no, they really weren't. I joke about it now. Dad looked at it and he was looking at because this was 1977 and steel companies were going belly up. U.S. Steel had converted itself. The smaller steel company that Dad worked with in Wilmington, Delaware was going belly up. The other company up in Claymont was in trouble. Bethlehem Steel was closing. I mean, the whole steel industry was in a crisis mode, and we managed to sidestep that. But different problem. But that's again, you know, coming back to, for each of us now as we go through our changes, you know, do the self-assessment, and then you have to go out and you have to scout and hunt. I mean, you know, the job that you probably want probably won't be on a job board. Okay, it's going to take talking to friends. You know, it's why I have made a practice of paying it forward to everybody. Okay, I've had some great help in my job searches. We have some mutual friends and acquaintances that have helped me out in the past. I won't throw them under the bus and name them here and now, but there are a lot of people that have helped me in mine, and I will just want to make sure I pay it forward. And whether it's a recruiter or whether it's an individual or whether it's a hiring manager, you know, we pay it forward. Okay, we talk to people all the time, and you never know. It works the other way too. The right person for the job may not be in an active job search.
Right.
They may be very happy where they are, and not willing to change. Okay, and then that's a job for a recruiter. But
I mean, I keep in touch with all the guys I graduated with, and whenever I see jobs come across my desk, I always send them out, because a couple times they've, you know, they weren't looking, and they were like, "Hey, what's going on with that one?" And I'm like, "Here's the contact information. You go do what you got to do." But I think a couple of them have switched jobs because of that.
Yeah, and it all gets paid forward. I mean, I know that I've had a lot of people help me, and I've tried to help a lot of people, and I know they've helped other people just because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, we talked about, and actually I did want to mention really briefly that I think it was an HBR podcast that I listened to, was talking about a lot of the people that they surveyed. They were in their positions through connections. So it wasn't just random job searches, but it was connections that they had, but not close connections. So these were just acquaintances, people that didn't know too well. But I mean, that really speaks to the fact of you need to put out your feelers, and you need to build your team. Can we talk about identifying who you need on your team? What are the different roles that you need?
Well, first of all, your significant other, your partner, okay, if you have one, is going to be a major part of this, okay, because they're going to walk through this with you just as hard as everybody else. Wouldn't hurt to have a financial planner. Okay, and if one person has both of these roles, that's great. But somebody that says it's okay to spend money here, or maybe you want to hold off spending the money there. Okay, you want some help like that. You want somebody that will, if you can, you know, somebody that might be a little bit more psychologically oriented, to help you through the changes that are going to happen with you. A lot of this can be found in different places. The public libraries here in Aurora had a job search book club, for lack of a better phrase, that, you know, people will use. My church has a job search ministry, okay, and they will bring in recruiters, they'll bring in psychologists, they'll bring in financial planners, they'll bring in these kind of people that you sit for an hour and a half over a cup of coffee in a neutral environment, and you can get this coaching along, especially if it's not part of an outplacement package that you may or may not have been able to get.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and mine is not the only church that does that. Okay, I mean, here in Aurora, Naperville, there's probably, I would say, half of the churches, no matter the denomination, have something of that nature. Okay, you might have to look for it. Your medical professional, your primary care physician is also part of the team, in the sense that you want somebody looking for your health. I mean, there are clues with regard to your mental health that they're trained to look for and can help intervene in the event there's intervention. Okay, that's a terrible word, but it's still there. They'll help you out. Okay, you're going to go through some tough times. You're going to wake up in the morning and say, I do not want to get dressed and do this today. I mean, if you follow that famous internet graduation speech from the admiral to the cadets, he said, you get up in the morning, the things that the Navy SEALs taught me is get up and make your bed right away. 2 reasons for that. You've accomplished your first task for the day, and second of all, it'll be clean when you come home. Okay, so, you know, those kinds of little steps you're going to have to do, and you're going to need somebody that'll kick you in the ass a little bit in the morning to get them done. And then, you know, set your schedule, because now that you've moved from a job that is creating stuff to a job that is finding a job. And it's a big change of perspective. It takes a little while to switch gears.
Yeah, I know. I kept a notebook and I wrote down everything I had to do every day. And my husband told me it looked like a serial killer notebook because I would things and I'd scratch it out and like all this stuff. But it kept me from, I think, going off in the end because I felt like, okay, you know, I at least talked to these 3 people and that's 3 things I can cross off my list. Look at me. I'm a rock star.
Exactly. That's that self-reward kind of thing. And at the end of the day, you get 5 crossed off, you get another glass of wine that night.
Oh, we did.
But yeah, that's part of it. You break it down. I mean, it's what's the word I'm looking for here? It's breaking it down. It's a big job, but break it down into the tasks. And if you say it looks like a serial killer notebook, that's fine. I mean, most of my day books look like that anyhow. So
yeah, as far as I know, I've killed 0 people, so we're good.
As far as I know that too. So, but
this
yeah,
is gonna come back to haunt me.
That's the other thing. And then, you know, one of the big pieces of encouragement I had came from I believe it was a Zig Ziglar quote, you know, along the lines of that if you're going after Moby Dick, make sure you take along the tartar sauce. It's a mixed metaphor, but you know,
I like it.
Plan on success. Okay, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not necessarily an oncoming train.
Awesome.
Right. I love it.
All right.
Well, Mark, thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Great.
That it can mean a lot to hear stuff like this. You know, when you're going through or anticipate going through something, and really something to take into account. You know, that you mentioned, you know, 2 of these can sink you into a depression. 2 of these, you know, of the 4, right? And 3 can be even more serious. So really something for us to think about. And if we have friends who are going through stuff like this at this time, definitely think about them, think about what they might be going through, and see what you can do. Send them a pack of Oreos or a box of wine.
Wine chips everywhere. Just
you know, actually, the biggest thing that helps, and I know today we specialize in doing e-communication and texting and stuff, but pick up the phone and call them. Okay, just pick up the phone. Okay, hearing a voice on the other end, whether it's a 5-minute or a 15-minute, or, you know, heaven forbid I can't go that. Well, I can. You go on for an hour. All right, just talk to them. Let them talk to you. Okay, listen. And if you're on the other side of the coin, don't be afraid to share. Okay, we're all going to have been here at least once. Okay, and that's a terrible prediction that I just made, but I think we're all going to go through this at least once in our lives. Okay, and the more friends that we have, the easier it'll be to get through.
I love it. All right, thank you so much, Mark. This is awesome.
Thank you, ladies. It was fun.
Thank you. If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
Bye.
Bye.